A long-time assembly plant employee and trusted mechanic with decades of experience told me something I'll never forget, something that completely changed my understanding of cars. Cars don't guzzle gas on their own, you force them to. He said it with one of those smiles that hides years and years of experience in workshops and accumulated practical wisdom. He patiently explained that most cars don't use more fuel because they're old or because the engine isn't performing as it used to, but because their owners make the exact same mistakes over and over again without realizing it. Small, seemingly innocent oversights, everyday gestures, habits that appear completely harmless, but turn any car into an insatiable gas guzzler. And the worst part is that they're so incredibly simple to avoid that when you finally learn them, you seriously wonder why absolutely no one told you before. Today, I'm going to show you the 22 specific habits that make your car guzzle gas like a truck, and most importantly, how to correct them so it runs exactly like it did on day one, not checking the fuel system pressure. This is one of those problems that goes completely unnoticed until it's too late. The fuel system must maintain a specific and constant pressure for the injectors to properly atomize the gasoline. When the pressure is too low, the injectors don't atomize the fuel well, and some of it enters the cylinder as large droplets instead of a fine mist. These droplets don't burn completely, are wasted, and dramatically increase fuel consumption. Conversely, if the pressure is excessively high, more fuel than necessary is injected, and the engine literally floods the mixture. Both scenarios are terrible for efficiency. The most common cause of low pressure is a clogged fuel filter that restricts flow, or a worn-out fuel pump that can no longer maintain the correct pressure. High pressure is usually due to a faulty pressure regulator that isn't releasing excess fuel properly. An experienced mechanic from Barcelona told me that at least 20% of the cars that came in complaining of high fuel consumption simply had a completely clogged fuel filter. Changing that filter, which cost just €30, immediately solved the problem, and fuel consumption dropped by up to 15%. Fuel system pressure should be checked during regular maintenance using a specific pressure gauge. It's a quick test that takes 5 minutes but can reveal hidden problems that are silently draining your tank. If you notice that the car has gradually lost power, that starting is more difficult, or that fuel consumption has increased for no apparent reason, fuel pressure should be the first thing checked before you start replacing expensive components unnecessarily, leaving your car idle for extended periods. Many drivers mistakenly believe that leaving their car completely unused for weeks or months doesn't affect future fuel consumption. They are completely wrong. When a car sits idle, several destructive things happen simultaneously. First, gasoline degrades and partially evaporates, losing its most volatile components. What remains is a denser, less efficient fuel that can partially clog the injectors when you finally start the engine. Second, the rubber seals in the fuel system dry out and shrink slightly, creating small air leaks that affect pressure and efficiency. Third, the battery slowly discharges, and when you finally start the car with a low battery, the alternator has to work at full capacity to recharge it, robbing the engine of power and increasing fuel consumption over several driving cycles. Fourth, the tires develop flat spots from the weight held in the same position, creating additional rolling resistance. I've seen cars that, after sitting for 2 months, consumed up to 20% more fuel during the first few weeks of use. The solution is relatively simple. If you know the car will be sitting idle for more than 2 weeks, fill the tank completely to minimize internal condensation. Disconnect the battery or use a battery maintainer. Raise the car slightly if possible to reduce tire pressure, and add fuel stabilizer to the tank to prevent degradation. If you can't do all that, at least try starting the car and letting it run up to operating temperature every 7 to 10 days, and drive it briefly to get everything moving and lubricated. A car is designed to move, not to sit idle collecting dust, not using the fuel recommended for your specific engine. This goes beyond simply using cheap versus premium gasoline. Every engine was designed specifically for a certain type and octane rating of fuel. If your manual clearly states that it requires a minimum of 95 octane gasoline, and you use 92 octane because it's cheaper, you're creating a problem called engine knock. Lower octane fuel ignites prematurely due to compression before the spark plug fires, creating shock waves inside the cylinder that literally knock the pistons. The knock sensor detects this and retards the ignition timing to compensate, but in doing so, it sacrifices efficiency and power. The result is that you need to press the accelerator harder to get the same response, consuming more fuel. Ironically, you save 10 cents per litre, but spend an additional 20 cents due to inefficiency. The math just doesn't work. On the other hand, putting higher octane gasoline than recommended in an engine that doesn't require it also doesn't help. A standard compression engine designed for 87 octane fuel gets no benefit from using premium 95 octane. You're simply paying more for fuel the engine can't utilize. It's like giving gourmet food to someone who's perfectly happy with regular home-cooked meals. Ignoring EGR valve maintenance. The EGR valve, or exhaust gas recirculation valve, is one of those components that almost no one knows about until it fails. Its function is to recirculate a small amount of exhaust gases back into the intake to reduce combustion temperature and nitrogen oxide emissions. When working correctly, it improves efficiency under certain driving conditions. But when it becomes clogged with carbon, which is extremely common, it starts to cause serious problems. A stuck-open EGR valve allows too much exhaust gas to constantly enter the intake, diluting the fresh air-fuel mixture. The engine responds by injecting more fuel to compensate, increasing fuel consumption by up to 12%. In addition, the idle becomes rough and acceleration sluggish. A stuck-closed EGR valve doesn't directly increase fuel consumption, but it does cause knocking and overheating, which eventually force the engine to work less efficiently. The EGR valve gets dirty faster if you mainly make short trips around town where the engine never reaches its optimal operating temperature, or if you use poor quality fuel. The EGR valve should be cleaned approximately every 50,000 kilometers. The procedure involves removing it and physically cleaning the carbon deposits with specific cleaners, or even mechanically. Some mechanics simply replace it, but a new valve costs between 200 and 400 euros, while cleaning it costs only about 50. A trick I learned from a German mechanic. Every 2 or 3 months, go for a drive on the highway and drive for 20 minutes at moderately high RPMs, say 3,500 RPM in 3rd or 4th gear, using the wrong or poor quality engine oil. Engine oil has 2 main functions: lubricating to reduce friction and sealing the piston rings to maintain compression. Both functions directly affect fuel consumption. If you use an oil that is too viscous, thicker than recommended, the engine has to work harder to move it through the system, especially during cold starts. This extra resistance consumes power, which translates directly into higher fuel consumption, typically between 3 and 5%. If you use oil that is too thin, less viscous than recommended, it doesn't properly seal the piston rings, and some of the combustion pressure escapes into the crankcase instead of pushing the piston down. The result is a loss of compression, a loss of power, and the need for more fuel to compensate. Furthermore, poor quality oil degrades more quickly, losing its lubricating properties. When oil is degraded, internal engine friction increases dramatically. It's like trying to move metal parts with sand between them instead of clean oil. Each manufacturer specifies exactly what oil viscosity to use: 5W30, 0W20, 10W40, and so on. These numbers aren't suggestions, they're requirements based on the specific tolerances of that engine. Using the correct oil and changing it regularly according to the recommended interval can improve fuel efficiency by up to 7% compared to using the wrong or degraded oil. Furthermore, modern synthetic oils, while initially more expensive, reduce friction better than conventional mineral oils and can improve fuel economy by an additional 2 to 3%. Improper spark plug. Gap adjustment. This is one of those incredibly simple mistakes that's hard to believe causes so much real damage. Spark plugs are literally the heart of engine combustion. They generate the electrical spark that ignites the air-fuel mixture inside the cylinders. But if the exact distance between their electrodes, that tiny gap where the spark jumps, isn't correct according to specifications, combustion becomes incomplete and inefficient. In simpler terms, some of the fuel enters the cylinder but doesn't burn completely. The inevitable result is increased fuel consumption, less available power, and an engine that seems to constantly beg for fuel, like someone ordering coffee every half hour. Many mechanics change spark plugs simply by eye or install new ones directly without gapping them first. This is a serious mistake. Every engine has a specific gap that varies depending on the manufacturer and the exact type of spark plug. If the gap is too small, the spark will be weak and insufficient. If it's too large, the spark will be inefficient and valuable energy will be lost. Ideally, you should use a spark plug gapping tool. A tool so inexpensive it costs less than a cup of coffee, yet it can save you liters of fuel each month. And yes, calibrating it isn't for geniuses or advanced studies. It simply involves gently adjusting the electrode until it reaches the exact measurement indicated in the vehicle's manual. A tiny detail, but with a huge impact on performance. Driving with underinflated tires. This point seems completely obvious, but very few drivers actually take it seriously. An underinflated tire not only wears out much faster, it also dramatically increases friction with the asphalt. And that friction is a direct enemy of fuel efficiency. According to studies conducted by manufacturers like Michelin and Bridgestone, driving with tires just half a kilogram per square inch below the recommended pressure can increase fuel consumption by up to 10%. That means if you fill your tank every week, you're literally wasting 1 out of every 10 fill-ups just because you're too lazy to check the air pressure. But the problem doesn't end there at all. Low pressure also negatively affects steering, worsens braking, and puts more strain on the suspension. It's exactly like walking with your shoes untied. At first, nothing is visible, but you end up with painful blisters. The funny thing is that many drivers only check the pressure when the tire looks visibly low, and that's a classic mistake. Tires can lose air slowly, even without any apparent leaks. That's why experts recommend checking them every 2 weeks or at least once a month with a reliable tire pressure gauge, not those old gauges at some gas stations that look like relics from the 1990s. A trick few mention: always check the pressure when the tires are cold before driving. The heat generated by friction temporarily increases the pressure and can give you a completely inaccurate reading. Maintaining the correct pressure not only extends tire life, but also reduces the load on the engine, keeping the air filter dirty. Here comes one of the most common and yet most invisible sins. The air filter is what allows the engine to breathe without ingesting dust, sand, or insects. If it's clean, air enters easily, the fuel mixture is perfect, and combustion occurs efficiently. But when the filter becomes clogged with accumulated dirt, the engine literally begins to suffocate. And a suffocated engine burns more fuel to compensate for the lack of oxygen, exactly as you would if you tried to run with a scarf over your face. The problem is that many drivers check the filter once a year or never at all. Some even think that shaking it or blowing on it a little is enough, as if that were a deep clean. It's not at all. Once the filter's pores are saturated, airflow is dramatically reduced, and the MAF sensor, which measures the amount of air entering the engine, starts giving completely false readings. The result? The car thinks it needs more fuel than it actually does and starts injecting more. It's that simple and that destructive. Changing the air filter costs less than half a tank of fuel, and doing so can improve efficiency by up to 15%. It also helps keep the injectors and valves clean. Interestingly, in China, many drivers change their air filter every 10,000 kilometers, even if it appears clean. I'd rather spend money on clean air than expensive gasoline, a taxi driver there told me, and I can't blame him. In the West, on the other hand, some people only check it when the car is literally coughing, using low-quality or adulterated gasoline. The eternal temptation of the cheapest option available. We've all been to that station promising miraculous prices, almost a 2-for-1 deal on fuel. But what seems like a quick saving turns into a slow and painful bill for your engine. Adulterated or low-quality gasoline contains impurities, less octane than advertised, and sometimes even water or recycled solvents. Yes, literally liquid garbage. When you fill your tank with this type of fuel, the engine starts working outside its ideal range, combustion becomes uneven, the pistons vibrate more than normal, the sensors get confused, and the car loses power while guzzling more gasoline to try to compensate. It's exactly like giving an athlete a bottle of soda instead of water and telling them to run a marathon. The worst part is that the damage isn't immediately visible. The effects appear gradually over time. The idle becomes unstable. Fuel consumption increases noticeably. The check engine light flashes like a Christmas tree, and before you know it, your injectors are clogged with deposits, and your catalytic converter is suffering. The solution is simple. Always fill up at reputable stations, preferably well-known brands. And if your car is designed for premium gasoline, don't fill it with regular. It's not a frivolous luxury, it's a mechanical necessity. Additionally, Using a certified fuel system cleaner every 2 to 3 months can help remove accumulated deposits and keep the system clean. Cheap gasoline sometimes not only ends up being expensive, but it also smells bad and produces black smoke, revving the engine in neutral or when starting from cold. This is the classic mistake of impatient morning drivers. You get to the car, turn the key, and without even thinking, rev the engine as if it needs that push to wake up. A colossal error. During the first few seconds after starting, the oil is still cold and hasn't fully circulated throughout the system. Revving the engine at that moment causes the pistons and valves to work without sufficient lubrication, which not only accelerates internal wear, but also wastes fuel unnecessarily. Because yes, that roar you like to hear when you rev a cold engine doesn't move the car an inch, but it burns gasoline as if it were. And even worse, if you do this in winter, the damage is multiplied exponentially. The fuel evaporates poorly, the air-fuel mixture becomes unbalanced, and the engine has to compensate by injecting more fuel. It's as if it were saying, either you warm me up properly, or I'll charge you in liters of gasoline. The correct way is incredibly simple. Start the car. Let it idle for about 30 seconds and then accelerate gently. You don't need to let it warm up for 5 minutes like in the old days because modern engines don't require it. But you do need to give the oil time to circulate through the system. Your engine isn't a fighting rooster. You don't need to wake it up by yelling, driving with unnecessary cargo. This is the laziest thief, but also the most persistent of all. Loading your car with extra weight is exactly like going to the gym with a backpack full of bricks. You get tired faster, and for no reason. Every extra kilogram you carry forces the engine to work harder, and that effort translates directly into higher fuel consumption. According to the US Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, carrying just 100 extra kilograms can increase fuel consumption by up to 5%. Now, do the math. Trunks full of tools you never use, boxes, water bottles, clothes, umbrellas, cables, that tire inflator that hasn't worked since 2015. It all adds up. Even roof racks or cargo carriers that you don't remove after a trip increase wind resistance and fuel costs. And you know what the worst part is? Many people don't even remember what they're carrying in the back. It's as if the car were also a mobile storage unit. Do a deep clean of your trunk every month. Keep only the essentials: jack, warning triangles, first aid kit, and basic tools. If you have an SUV or pickup truck, don't be tempted to use it as a mobile storage unit. And if you really need to transport cargo, make sure the weight is distributed properly. Fun fact: some modern cars have sensors that calculate the load and adjust fuel consumption. Don't forget to check the oxygen sensor. The oxygen sensor is like the engine's nutritionist. It tells the engine exactly how much air and fuel it needs to maintain a perfect mixture. But when it fails, the car starts consuming fuel uncontrollably, as if it were at an all-you-can-eat buffet. This small component is responsible for measuring exhaust gases and sending data to the computer to adjust the air-fuel mixture. If it's dirty, damaged, or old, the system starts working completely blind. The inevitable result is an overly rich fuel mixture, black smoke billowing from the exhaust, and fuel consumption that skyrockets by up to 30%. Many people ignore the sensor because the car still runs and moves, but the reality is that the engine is operating with completely incorrect parameters. And it not only uses more fuel, it also pollutes more and progressively damages the catalytic converter, one of the most expensive parts to replace. The solution is simple. Replace it every 100,000 kilometers, or sooner if you notice excessive fuel consumption or if the check engine light comes on. A new sensor costs relatively little compared to what you could be losing in fuel month after month. Fun fact: some drivers change spark plugs, filters, and even oil 1,000 times, but never once change the oxygen sensor. And then they wonder why their car guzzles fuel like an old truck, driving in low gears out of habit. Are you one of those drivers who drives in second gear when you could easily be in third, or one of those who feels more in control keeping the engine roaring? Well, I hate to break it to you, but your car is doing unpaid overtime. Constantly driving in low gears unnecessarily increases the engine's revolutions per minute, RPM. That means more work, more heat, more wear and tear, and of course, more fuel consumption. The irony is that many people do it thinking the car responds better when, in reality, the only thing responding is your fuel tank, which empties faster than your desire to work on a Monday. The golden rule is incredibly simple. Listen to the engine. If it sounds strained or too loud for your speed, shift gears. Keep the RPMs in the efficient range of 2,000 to 3,000 RPM in most cars. By doing so, you not only save fuel, but also extend the life of your engine and transmission. Not aligning or balancing your car. It might seem like a minor detail, but alignment and balancing have a direct impact on fuel consumption. If the wheels are misaligned, the car doesn't move in a straight line on its own. It drags, it fights against itself, and that means the engine has to work harder to maintain the direction. The inevitable result is more friction, more resistance, and yes, more gas burned. It's exactly like running with crooked feet. You can do it, but you get tired twice as fast. A misaligned car also wears the tires unevenly, which further increases fuel consumption and can become dangerous. If you notice the steering wheel vibrating, the car pulling to one side, or the tires squealing for no apparent reason, it's time for a checkup. Get an alignment and balancing every 10,000 kilometers or after hitting a hard pothole. It's not a luxury, it's an investment, because what you spend on that service, you recover in fuel savings and tire wear. If your car seems to have a mind of its own and pulls to the right when you let go of the steering wheel, it has no soul. It urgently needs an alignment. And if you thought checking the filter and using good gasoline was enough, think again. The following mistakes are the ones that really drain your tank without you even realizing it. Some of these habits are so common that you probably do them yourself every day, and each one is literally costing you hundreds of euros a year. Braking and accelerating abruptly. This is the absolute favorite mistake of perpetually rushed drivers who are always in a hurry. They accelerate brutally to get to the traffic light quickly and brake suddenly as soon as they see it turn red. The result of this behavior is skyrocketing fuel consumption, prematurely worn brakes, and dizzy passengers in the back seat. Every time you accelerate aggressively, the engine injects huge amounts of fuel to generate that immediate response you want. But since you almost always end up braking shortly after that acceleration, all that energy is completely wasted. It's exactly like running at full speed toward a wall and proudly boasting that you got there fast, just before the painful impact. In addition to all this, constant hard braking dramatically raises the temperature of the brakes and significantly reduces their lifespan. Driving smoothly, anticipating the traffic ahead, can easily reduce fuel consumption by up to 15%. A practical trick that works wonderfully. Imagine you have a completely full glass of water on your dashboard and you can't spill a single drop. If you can do it without getting wet, you're driving efficiently. And yes, I know perfectly well, in daily traffic, that sounds completely impossible, but even reducing your aggressive driving a little makes a huge difference in the long run. Ignoring minor leaks or drips. A few drops under the car don't seem like a big deal at all, right? After all, it's probably just condensation from the air conditioner. Well, it's not always that simple. Sometimes it's oil, coolant, or even gasoline slowly evaporating without you noticing. And here's the painful fact: no one tells you. A single drop per second adds up to several whole liters lost per month. You're literally throwing your money away like you're watering plants. Small leaks are incredibly treacherous. Not only do they increase fuel consumption, but they can also seriously damage components if the oil or coolant level gets too low. What's more, evaporating gasoline creates dangerous fumes and pollutes far more than an old engine from the 1980s running. The solution is incredibly simple. Visually inspect the ground where you park and the engine compartment at least once a week. If you notice dark, oily stains, traces of bright green or pink coolant, or a strong fuel smell that won't go away, don't ignore it thinking it will disappear on its own. The sooner you check and address it, the cheaper the repair will be. And don't fall for the classic excuse of, "It's just a tiny drop, it doesn't matter." If you were paid €1 for every drop your car leaks, you'd have enough money to replace the entire brake system. Leaks start small but grow, and by the time you finally decide to address them, the damage is already done, and the repair costs 10 times more. A simple weekly check can literally save you hundreds of euros and many liters of wasted fuel. Driving with a misaligned or poorly timed engine. This problem is far more common than most people realize and stems from something as seemingly simple as a misaligned timing belt or an unsuitable spark plug. When the spark doesn't coincide precisely with the optimal combustion moment, the engine runs completely out of sync. The inevitable result is audible metallic knocking, a significant loss of power and fuel consumption worthy of a commercial airliner taking off. A misaligned engine burns the air-fuel mixture too early or too late in the compression cycle. As a direct consequence, a significant portion of the energy is wasted as heat instead of being converted into useful motion. It's an invisible problem to the naked eye, but one that literally guzzles gas without you noticing until you check your monthly bill. Detecting it is relatively simple. If the car vibrates abnormally, makes characteristic knocking, rattling, or metallic sounds, or has serious trouble maintaining a stable idle, the ignition timing is probably off. Taking it to a trusted garage for a complete timing check can make a world of difference between an efficient engine and a fuel guzzler. Not changing spark plugs on time. Spark plugs are designed to last a long time, that's true, but they are definitely not eternal or indestructible. Manufacturers proudly advertise that their spark plugs last a full 100,000 kilometers, but that's under absolutely perfect laboratory conditions. In the real world, with heavy urban traffic, frequent cold starts, and fuel of varying quality, spark plugs wear out well before that optimistic figure. The electrodes gradually erode, the gap between them changes and is no longer correct. Old and worn spark plugs cause weak or erratic ignition of the fuel mixture. The engine, detecting that the combustion is not optimal, automatically compensates by injecting more fuel to try to maintain power. Fuel consumption increases gradually, so slowly that you don't even notice it until you compare it to previous months. The practical recommendation is to change spark plugs every 60,000 kilometers under normal mixed driving conditions. If your driving is mainly urban with many stops and starts, consider changing them every 30,000 kilometers. Furthermore, it is absolutely crucial to invest in high-quality spark plugs from reputable brands like NGK, Denso, or Bosch, which have decades of experience and a solid reputation. Cheap, no-name spark plugs from discount stores can fail prematurely, damage your engine, and ultimately cost you much more. A quality spark plug might cost 10 or 15 euros, while a cheap one might cost 5. But if the cheap one fails after 20,000 kilometers and damages the catalytic converter in the process, those 5 euros saved could cost you 2,000 euros in repairs. Spark plugs are small but critical, and they deserve proper attention and investment. Using air conditioning incorrectly. Air conditioning definitely draws direct power from the engine, that's an undeniable fact, but it doesn't have to completely drain your fuel tank if you use it wisely. The most common mistake I see repeated constantly is turning the air conditioning on full blast with the windows wide open. That's literally wasting valuable energy, cooling air that immediately escapes through the open windows. The correct and efficient strategy is this. First, when you get into the car, which has been sitting in the blazing sun, fully ventilate the cabin with all the windows open while driving slowly for a minute or two. This expels the super hot air that has accumulated. Then, close all the windows and only then turn on the air conditioning. Use the recirculation mode to cool more quickly because you're cooling the same air repeatedly instead of constantly bringing in hot air from outside. Don't set the temperature to the extreme minimum of 16 degrees if you're already comfortable at 23 degrees. Every degree difference counts and consumes energy. Keep your cabin air filters clean because when they're clogged, the air conditioner has to work much harder to circulate the air, wasting energy unnecessarily. Here's a little-known tip. Turn off the air conditioning a few minutes before you arrive at your destination. The system continues to blow residual cool air for several minutes after you turn it off, so take advantage of it. Air conditioning is wonderful and necessary in summer, but use it wisely and it won't consume as much energy as you might think. Ignoring the transmission fluid. The transmission, whether manual or automatic, absolutely needs clean fluid at the correct level for smooth and efficient shifting. When the fluid is old, contaminated, or the level is low, the transmission works significantly harder, generates more internal heat, and operates less efficiently. The engine must compensate for this inefficiency with more power, which directly translates to higher fuel consumption. Automatic transmissions are especially sensitive to fluid quality and level. The general recommendation is to change the transmission fluid according to the manual specifications, typically every 60,000 kilometers, although some manufacturers claim its lifetime, which is technically true only if you consider their expected lifespan is barely 100,000 kilometers. Checking the level regularly is complicated because many modern transmissions don't have an accessible dipstick and require a specific procedure that usually necessitates a lift. A transmission that slips when shifting gears, shifts roughly with audible clunks, or is slow to engage consumes significantly more fuel because it's losing energy to internal friction instead of efficiently transmitting it to the wheels. Preventative transmission fluid maintenance not only saves fuel, but also saves thousands of euros in repairs or complete transmission replacements, which can cost between 3,000 and 7,000 euros depending on the vehicle. A fluid change costs between 150 and 300 euros. The math is clear. Prevention is infinitely cheaper than repair. Driving with the windows open at high speeds. At low urban speeds, say less than 50 kilometers per hour, driving with the windows open is perfectly fine and actually consumes less fuel than using the air conditioning. But on the highway at over 80 kilometers per hour, aerodynamic drag increases dramatically and exponentially. At those speeds, open windows create massive turbulence that constantly slows the car down. The engine has to work much harder to overcome that drag, consuming significantly more fuel than if you used the air conditioning with the windows closed. Studies have shown that at highway speeds, open windows can increase fuel consumption by up to 20%, while air conditioning only increases it by 10%. The correct strategy is to close all the windows and use the air conditioning when driving on the highway, but open the windows in the city where speeds are low and aerodynamics are not critical. Also, remove the roof rack when you are not actively using it. Those racks, even when empty, significantly reduce the vehicle's aerodynamics and increase fuel consumption. Every aerodynamic improvement matters, especially on the highway where you spend hours at high speed. Air is a fluid, and at high speeds it behaves almost like water. The more aerodynamic your car is, the less force it needs to move through it. Think of how fish have aerodynamic shapes to move efficiently in the water. Your car needs the same in the air, not performing regular preventative maintenance. And finally, we come to the most costly mistake on this entire list: postponing or ignoring regular preventative maintenance. Religiously following the manufacturer's specified maintenance intervals is not optional or a luxury. It's an absolute necessity. Regular oil changes, filter replacements, and comprehensive periodic checkups prevent major problems before they develop. A well-maintained car consistently consumes less fuel than a neglected one. That's a proven fact. Preventative maintenance catches small problems before they become catastrophic and expensive issues. Regularly investing in preventative maintenance saves you many times that amount in later emergency repairs. Keeping meticulous records of all maintenance performed makes it easier to spot wear patterns and anticipate what will need attention next. Your car is a significant investment, probably the second largest after your house. Protecting it properly with regular maintenance is simply economic common sense. An oil change costs 60 euros every 6 months. Rebuilding an engine due to lack of maintenance costs 5,000 euros. An air filter costs 20 euros. Repairing injectors damaged by dirty air costs 1,000 euros. A transmission fluid change costs 200 euros. Replacing a destroyed transmission costs 6,000 euros. Do you see the pattern? Preventative maintenance is always cheaper than reactive repairs. What's more, a well-maintained car retains its resale value better, runs more reliably, breaks down less often, and gives you extra years of service. Now you know exactly why your car seems to guzzle gas instead of consuming it normally. It's not the vehicle's fault at all, but rather the habits of the driver operating it. These 22 mistakes you've just learned about may seem individually insignificant, but together they add up to a huge amount in your monthly fuel bill. Correcting even half of these mistakes will result in truly significant monthly savings that you'll immediately notice in your budget. You don't need to be an expert mechanic with decades of experience to apply these practical tips. Most of them are simply common sense and paying genuine attention to the details we normally ignore. This is the fundamental difference between the driver who constantly complains about excessive fuel consumption and the smart driver who understands their vehicle. Now I ask you directly, how many of these 22 mistakes did you regularly make without even realizing it? I invite you to share your experiences in the comments. Perhaps your story will help other drivers avoid the same costly errors. Small, consistent changes to your driving and maintenance habits generate large, cumulative savings in the long run. Properly caring for your car is literally caring for your wallet and your family's finances. Knowledge is power, and now you have the power and the information needed to save significantly on fuel and make your car perform as it should.